Hi, welcome back. Welcome to the Takeout Effect, brought to you by Business Takeout. Uh, I'm your host. My name is Banki, and yeah, it's a um, sorry, Jane is 1 second, okay? Sorry, I was having a bit. I have forgot I had the laptop open. So my apologies. So let's start all over. Welcome to the Takeout Effect. My name is Banki, and I'm your host. It's a pleasure to introduce my guest. Her name is Jane. She's a career coach, and she is also the founder of Higher Altitude. Jane, do you mind letting the audience know more about who you are?
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Banki. So my name is Jane Janniere, and I'm the founder and CEO of a boutique staffing firm called Higher Altitude, where we place corporate professionals in the area of IT, accounting and finance, and cybersecurity.
Okay. And for those who are just joining in right now, we're going to have a great conversation. If you can please like and share and subscribe for those who are watching on YouTube. We're just having a great day today. So how did your journey start, Jane? How did you decide to go into the journey of being a career coach and also owner of a staffing firm?
Well, you know what? I spent 17 years working in the corporate global space with a global organization, Robert Half, and in that capacity, I worked in various positions and sort of was a division director for the accounting and finance space, administration, as well as accounting and finance. After just some time, I think at some points your shelf life, I call it, expires, and it's time to move on to new ventures. So after 16 years, I decided to leave and wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. And certainly just, I guess, it kind of morphed into me having my own staffing firm, by clients reaching out to me saying, hey, I tried to contact you over where you're working before and I couldn't find you. And they found me on LinkedIn and asked me to service them with their corporate requirements. So then that's when Higher Altitude was born. Well, really, in fact, I started off with a different company name called Staff Optimization. And then through a rebrand and a relaunch, named it Higher Altitude during COVID.
Okay. So the company that you're working for was one of the largest staffing agency in the world, right?
Yes, it was.
And you must have gained a lot of experience with that company.
100%.
And when I was speaking to you, you had mentioned that you left because you were tired of doing the same thing in and out, right? And that you decided to take a break from it all. And now you walked right back into it. But as a different role. You're in the role of the owner. So you're the business owner in opposed to the employee, right?
Right.
And you're wearing many hats. And what has that been like, as now the owner of a staffing firm in opposed to an employee? How has the transition been for you?
Well, I would definitely say, I think in the corporate space, I took a lot for granted because, you had everything at your fingertips, right? So you had marketing being done. You had your social media being done. You had an administrator assisting you with administrative requests. And, you had accountants in the background taking care of the financials and just bringing you reports regarding whether it be profit and losses or how, where the business is trending for the month and, year over year reports. So now, I have my hands in all of it, as any business owner does, right? So now I'm responsible for my own social media. I'm responsible for my own marketing. I'm responsible for, coming up with the brand and marketing campaigns. I'm responsible for accounting, making sure that, the accounting is done on time, that I'm billing my clients on time, and that I incorporated. So I'm anticipating, different corporate laws in terms of the business and accounting. So just doing all the things and being the face of the business. And then on the other hand, I'm still the corporate recruiter, companies are still coming to me directly to say, you know what, can you service my requirements and find these particular corporate individuals? So I would say, like, right now I've got, you know, my hands involved in it all and definitely looking to scale.
Wonderful. That's great. So let me ask you, um, there's another part of you as well. You're a career coach. Can you tell us more about how that differentiates from, being a staffing agency, and what are the services you offer in both elements?
Yeah, so I mean, okay, so first, you know, as a corporate recruiter, you know, companies are calling me to find them staff. And you know, the market that we're in, it's a very, very competitive space right now. So, you know, Higher Altitude really believes in finding candidates who are definitely making an impact into the roles that they're going into. So, for the most part, we specialize in working with the gainfully employed candidates who are looking to make their next best move into their next full-time role. On the career coaching side, it's a little bit different because, you know, that's when I think the real Jane Janniere comes out, where she's, you know, helping individuals through transition, because anybody that's coming to me typically is in some type of career transition, whether it be that they want to up level to their next potential role within their organization. They may be looking to even move out of one industry to another, or they may be looking to go from one career to another, or they may even be looking to go from, you know, their career after many years to entrepreneurship. So, you know, the conversations vary from person to person. And that's, I mean, even on the Higher Altitude side, as a recruiting staffing firm, it's very much a white glove, you know, bespoke service for my clients. But on the same time, you know, on the career side, you know, I develop relationships a little bit differently because they're one-to-one. We're talking about, you know, their careers, which is very important and sensitive to them. And it's really about, you know, unraveling sometimes sort of where they're at, and it's just a little bit of a different approach, but it's typically, again, for people in transition and just maneuvering through their day to day.
Okay. There was a question. I'm wondering if my producer, yes, a question from Jamie. Would you say you're pro candidate or pro client?
That's a really, really good question. And I'm going to say to you that I'm pro both. And people always, I'm sure people wonder, well, how can you be both if you're serving the client and if you're serving the candidate? And I'll tell you why. I'm responsible for being an ambassador for both the organization, because at the end of the day, as a recruiter, my responsibility is to find the talent for the client. So that takes before I even get that business, if I don't have an established relationship, I've had to sort of build a relationship. And so it's sales, right? On the flip side, you know, a candidate who's gainfully employed, who may be what we call passively looking in the market, you know, they're definitely, there is some sales to that as well. Like, how do you, I don't want to use the word convince, but help somebody transition from, you know, one good employer to another great employer. And so I have to be an ambassador for the candidate as well, to say to the client, hey, you know what, I'm presenting Banki for this opportunity. Here's what Banki brings to the table that is not, you know, here's what I observe that's not on her resume, right? Because I'm not a resume service. I provide a service to the candidates where I go to bat for them. I speak about their experiences. I talk about how, you know, they're going to maneuver with the manager, with the organization. How does that line up? And then, of course, they've got to do, you know, their best in an interview to demonstrate whatever it is I've just sold.
Okay, amazing. So my next question to you is, what makes Higher Altitude unique?
You know what? I think what we are on 3 different pillars, right? So the pillars of the 3 most important pillars of Higher Altitude, the first one is integrity. We will not, or I will not, stand for any kind of, you know, uh, behavior that just isn't conducive, like I would say, to a higher level, so, or to a higher altitude, as I call the company. So, right, we're honest. We are, you know, presenting candidates with opportunities that are real, that are immediate for clients. That would be the main thing. The other part is that we definitely are a company with candidates who make an impact. So we want people who are going to go in and not just be the standard employees that, everybody can find on Indeed or Monster or any other job boards. We want to work with those who are not on the market. So right now we have an unemployment rate of about 8%. And so we are talking to, the other 92% of the marketplace, and finding opportunities for those individuals. Was there another question? I would say that's the difference. And I also think that the major difference is coming from a corporate space, there's a lot of metrics involved. And certainly we're not at that place yet where, we definitely have, turnaround times that we adhere to. We definitely want to adhere to the expectations of the client, but we don't just, put people in the database just for the sake of putting them in the database to say, hey, you know what, like, let's just, fill it up, and we don't have opportunities for them. We want to be a company that, gives people the service that they require and not have to be based on a metrics driven, time slot where, oh, I need 10 people this week or 20 people that week, and just meeting people for no good reason.
There was a question for the audience. If you were to serve two masters, can you fight for the client if your loyalty lies with the company? Oh, so how can you fight for the client if your loyalty lies with the company? So
for the client. So, they mean the candidate. How can I fight? But my loyalty is to both, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm working with a candidate who it's very sensitive. Moving somebody from one, like I said, good opportunity to another, takes some understanding and takes some work. And I need to sell that candidate also to the client and be the ambassador. So I think my loyalty, not even that I know that my loyalty goes to both, because at the end of the day, one can't be without the other. You can't have one good candidate, one good client, and not a good candidate. They have to be married to each other.
I was just about to have you say that. I'm thinking they're married.
Well, you know what? It makes for a good marriage. Like, I mean, the same thing is yeah.
So I think she's frozen on my end. Hey, welcome back.
I don't know what happened there.
I'm not sure what technology these days, so it happens.
Always, yeah.
So let's talk about work-life balance, because you are a career coach, you own a staffing agency, and you're a mother. You have responsibilities. How do you balance it all?
You know what? Well, luckily my kids are grown, so you know what? I'm not having to rush anybody to school at this time, or homeschool. So I really feel for all the moms and dads who are, homeschooling children at this time, plus doubling down in their full-time work or entrepreneurship, right? So I do have, I guess, the luxury right now of, working on my own without having to worry about those additional things. But I would still say that, work-life balance really doesn't exist for me at the moment as I'm building this baby, because that's what it feels like, right? It feels like it's been 3 years, well, I'm in my 4th year, and it's like having a baby and you've got to be there all the time, nursing it, making sure, feeding them on demand. And I'm still feeling like I'm at the feeding on the demand stage. Yeah, balance doesn't really exist at the moment. Well, I try to balance it out, but I would say that this is going to be a very important year for higher altitude as we scale. And so that means, more delegation. As as a business owner, you're in the early stages, you're working in the business as well as on the business. And so right now, I'm really doubling down, doing both and doing all the things till late at night. But I think when you have a passion, for what you're doing, you don't mind, but you do have to say note to self. I need to put this in perspective and I need to have some balance. I need to still spend time. I do have, two, they are grown, but they are living at home and working, but still you need to make time for family time. It's really, really important. So the balance, I have to admit and be honest, it's not looking too hot right now, but definitely it is a work in progress.
I agree, and I know what you mean because it's always a yin yang type of thing where you have to really organize your time, set boundaries when needed, just to really have that balance flow through the way you need it to be.
Absolutely.
So higher altitude has been around for about 4 years.
This year marks its 4th year, yeah.
And what has been the toughest challenge on this journey for you?
You know what? I think again, like I mentioned, at the early stages or even at the onset of it, I wasn't sure if this was really what I was going to do. It really, like I said, it morphed from a couple of clients asking for assistance, and really giving them a bespoke service, realizing that, yeah, you could do this. So I think the biggest challenge is just the change. I worked with an amazing, during COVID, I worked with an amazing brand specialist who, I was part of her program and part of her coaching, and learned that some parts of my business needed to change from a branding standpoint. I really learned. So, like I said, I started off with the name staff optimization. And when I spoke with her, she said, "Oh, I don't think that's the right name for your business based on your company values, based on what I've seen from you in our discussions." And so I took the whole business and turned it upside down in terms of, rebranding. I've got a website that's still in development at this moment that should be out soon. And so I think thinking that you're on one path or one course, and then someone says that has been a specialist in an area with some very, very top brands says, I think you need to maybe go in a different direction in terms of one of the most important parts, which is branding, really opened my eyes to, that it's not always going to be linear, to be in business for yourself, that it can take a turn, it can go up. One minute it can, you can be doing really well. And then sometimes, and certainly in the staffing and recruitment industry, it is there is some peaks and valleys, right? Or feast or famine, they call it in the industry. So I think it's learning where to have, again, some business balance, and just, just riding the wave. But then, and then I think the other biggest thing is, I think the biggest challenge too, if I'm honest, is being responsible for all the marketing and realizing that social media is a real thing, and that, people are really looking to you and looking at your branding. And I think, when I worked with the brand specialist, I learned that, yeah, people really in today's world really look at your digital footprinting, and your digital footprinting and your personal branding and your business branding is so critical, because I really believe that, for instance, Facebook and social media for business was a bit of a plaything. I didn't really think that, there would be many steps that people take at looking at you. So they may look at you on LinkedIn first, then they'll go to your Instagram, then they'll see if you're on Facebook, and then they go back to LinkedIn to make the appointment. So I didn't realize there were all those vehicles. And now that puts a lot of added pressure, because I do not have a marketing company or a marketing department to say, hey, let me take care of that marketing for you like you did in the big corporate space. Mm-hmm. So I had to learn how to be creative, which is not my natural suit. And I've had to really pay attention and go to school, so to speak, for another skill set, which is how do I promote myself online? How do I promote the business online? So I would say that that was the biggest challenge.
I can definitely relate. I understand how challenging it would be moving from the corporate sector to really doing it all yourself, wearing different hats.
Yeah.
I was on Clubhouse today, and they had mentioned the topic was employer versus entrepreneurship versus side hustle. And it really put into light that employer, working for an employer, it makes you feel more safe, right? Being an entrepreneur, there's a lot of uncertainty with it. The ups and downs that you've mentioned, you really don't know, you can't predict the future with it. But if you were to work at a 9 to 5, you then know every 2 weeks you're going to get a paycheck, providing you still have the job.
Yeah. And you really have a different amount of time to build your business, I think, too, when you have a side hustle. And I know that there is a lot of people who run a side hustle like it's their full-time job, so respect to those individuals. But I think also for those that I've seen and even have mentored, it's challenging, right? But you also have sort of you can actually have that paycheck coming in, and it's still a passion project. So you can put all the time in. You don't mind having some sleepless nights because, you've got your full-time job, and then it's really interesting to kind of craft and put together your own business.
That's true. And that's going to lead into a question that we had from the audience. I'm wondering if my producer can put it up. What advice would you give to someone who is looking for employment during COVID?
Yeah, so what advice would I give to someone who's looking for employment during COVID is to keep looking, because there are opportunities out there. And, if you know how to market yourself effectively, and if you don't know, there's a lot of free information on Google. There's a lot of tips that even I provide on, Jane, the career coach, on Instagram and so forth. And there's a lot of, other coaches out there, and a lot of people that are, career strategists and so forth. I would say, though, how you find a job during COVID time is to know what lane you're driving in. Okay, so it's the time for you to really understand and look at what am I really good at, and how can I find opportunities that match and align my strengths and my values. So I guess, I don't know if that answers the question per se, but I would say, know what it is that you really, really want and go for it. Right? So don't sit back and think, well, it's COVID, all hell has broken loose and I can't find a job. There are opportunities. So I'll give you one example. One of my best clients, I'm on the 4th placement full-time for this client since March of last year. And, they've been senior roles to one was a junior role. Now I'm working on an intermediate role. That's just one client, right? So companies are definitely hiring. And I would say, tap into recruiters, tap into, other staffing firms that may be hiring on a temporary basis. If you're not working, be open, be flexible. I would say don't turn opportunities down that can really help you get to your next phase, because you don't know. And you don't know what conversations that you may have that may lend itself to something much bigger that you were not even aware or even thought could happen. So, I would say be open, be flexible, but really, really work on your personal branding, because it's critical how you answer questions, your demeanor, your cadence, the way that you position yourself. You really have to be mindful of that. It's how you're presenting yourself and how you're, representing yourself. How do you want to be seen in the world? I think that's the first thing that people need to work on before the interview. You got to sort that out first. Know how you want to show up.
Those are some really great tips. It brings back memories on my days when I used to go to job interviews and I used to practice in front of the mirror.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, because People just do not practice. I'm doing a special project right now for an organization who's asked me to do some shortlisting for them because they've got a number of opportunities on. Like the number is, if I told you that one company had over 100 openings, you probably would look at me sideways during COVID, but it's true. And, I'm doing the preliminary interviews for them, and the way that some people show up, it's disappointing. It's disappointing. And I work on these projects for different companies. And, I'm always disappointed when people say, they don't even read, they haven't even, it's clear and evident that they haven't done the research about the organization. That's basic. We've been doing that and talking about that for so many years. And people, the truth of the matter is, it doesn't even matter about this project or other projects. It happens all around where people say, oh, I'm applying for this opportunity. And when you get down to the bones of it, they have not read the job description. You've got to read the job description. You've got to know what it is that you're signing up for, that you're interviewing for, because it can be embarrassing when you find out that you don't even have the necessary requirements.
That's true. It's always good to be prepared and know exactly what you're getting yourself into, especially when you're looking for jobs, because you could have invested that time into finding a job that's suitable for you. There was a few questions from the audience. I'm wondering if my producer can bring it up. Is there a best way to write your resume?
Well, I think that's a whole nother conversation that would probably take a good hour. I think a functional chronological resume is always best. I know that they're getting very sophisticated resumes now, very sexy resumes in terms of highlighting skills, and there's emojis, for LinkedIn, and emojis for phones, and all that works. I think what you have to remember is to keep your resume as clean as possible, because most times if you're applying to an organization, they have something called an ATS tracker. And the ATS tracker, what that does is it picks up and reads, looks for keywords. Almost think of it like a scanner, where it scans all of the keywords for a particular opportunity. And the more words you have, then, and I do have an ATS tracker, but it doesn't probably quite work maybe the way that some of these other corporate machines may be working. But, they may be looking for a minimum, let's say, of 10 keywords or 20 keywords. And then obviously the ones that match the best are the candidates that are going to be seen. So I would say you really want to make sure that your resume is optimized best for the role that you're applying for, which also means that you will not use the same resume, or my recommendation would be that, you wouldn't use the same resume for every single job, because you know what, every company has a different idea about one position responsibilities over another, right? So.
Okay. There was a few questions. I'm wondering if my producer can bring up one of the questions. Should I consider taking skills based on courses during this downtime?
Yeah, 100%. If you have time, if you have downtime, you should definitely be up leveling your skills, right? So strengthening, I'll use one example, like if you're an accountant or thinking about accounting, Microsoft Excel is one skill set that is required in every single situation or every particular job that a client has asked me to fill. So let's say you've only got the basic requirements, you probably want to get to, intermediate skill sets where you're using VLOOKUPs and pivot tables and so forth. So you might want to, level up your skill that way, or brushing up your Microsoft Word, or taking, look at the job descriptions. Job descriptions tell you a lot of things. If you even think of not the job maybe that you would like to do right now, but maybe one that you might want to do in the future. What skills are they looking for technically? What type of responsibilities are they looking for? And maybe think about how you can find positions or, technical skills that you may need to use in the future that are not being asked of you right now.
Okay. So I want to start my own staffing firm.
You
How do
do?
I go about that? Not me per se, but for anyone
Yeah.
who looking to start their own staffing firm, like what tips would you give them?
Well, I mean, the first question that I would ask is, what type of experience do you have in that space? And it's interesting that you say, and I know that you're joking, I've had people come to me and say, hey, I think that the staffing business is, a really good industry. It's a really good business and I'd love to do it. And they don't have any experience. They don't understand gross margin. They don't understand markup. They don't understand how they would even bill the client. They don't understand the contracts that are involved, right? Being liable, for instance, if you want to run a temporary staffing business, you need to have insurance for any business, number one. But, you could be liable if somebody injures themselves on the doorsteps of an organization that you're sending them to. Do you have the right WSIB information to produce those claims, or for WSIB to handle the claims for you? So I would say one experience, one, do you have a good lawyer to create the proper documentation for contracts that you require? If you are running a temporary desk, do you have the funds available to pay candidates when the client doesn't pay you on time because they might be on a different cycle for their accounts payable? So I think there's quite a lot involved in the staffing, and I think some knowledge and knowing sort of the legalities, I think, is really, really important.
Okay.
I think you're frozen.
All right. So, how as we're coming to the closing of our chat today, I believe, I'm sure if my producer can bring it up. It was from Jamie. I am disappointing in the staffing agencies out there. They are unresponsive and unprofessional. Even large recruitment firms such as Robert Half are questionable.
Mm.
So I remember we were speaking, and you were actually telling me about how your staffing agency is unique in a sense that you're more of a boutique type of firm, right? And that you focuses on quality instead of the number of clients. Can you tell me like why that's important?
Yeah, I think it's important because, I believe in giving, like I call it a white glove service where, and I'm a little bit old school in terms of how I approach, but I'm obviously up to speed with new technologies and the new way of doing things. But I still think, for example, I am still very custom when I'm still very custom when it comes to meeting candidates. So I will not put a candidate in front of a client that I have not met or someone on my team hasn't met. That's number one. That goes with integrity because I feel like I can't get to know what a candidate. So someone asked about, well, how can you be on both sides of the fence? The reason why I can be both on both sides of the fence is because I understand when a candidate says, this is ideally, or when I ask them, what ideally are you interested in? What makes sense for you? Because not every VP of finance or controller or business analyst or any role that I work on, for example, human resources, every time a position comes up, it doesn't mean that because you have that job title that my client is going to be for you. So when we, drill down and get very detailed in terms of what it is that you're looking for, what is it that you're really great at, what are your superpowers in your job, how are you going to make a definite impact in the opportunity, in this particular opportunity, or can you, or what impact do you think you can make, and what problem are you solving? So it's that level of detail that I get into with candidates to make sure that they're being placed for the right opportunity. Now, here's the thing. Are they going to, I have to give my clients choice. But every candidate that I put in front of a client can definitely get the job because they're prepared for it. So I don't just shoot in the dark and send people because, oh, every person that fits that title can go. No. So I think that's the difference, and I take time with that. I take great pride in that. I think the other difference is on the client side, I spend just as much time with the clients, really understanding the managers, the corporate culture, who's going to be the best fit. So, they feed into me what they need, and obviously asking the right questions so that, again, we can get these two, ideas married together so that we have a successful placement, right? Because I don't don't want to have to replace a candidate from a job because they didn't work out.
So, one thing I had in mind, okay, so in our conversation earlier this week, we had spoken about, I had asked basically about human resources because one would think that once you have a human resources diploma, that you would be able to own a staffing agency. But from the sounds of it, the position that you're in right now is 100% sales position, correct?
100%. I mean, definitely there's the human resources element of having a staffing firm or being a recruiter because you're dealing with people, right? You're dealing with expectations, you're dealing with personalities. And so that human resources piece does come in. Where it's a little bit different is that, I'm not dealing with labor laws, I'm not dealing with legislations, I'm not dealing with unionized legalities and all the things, and I'm probably not even giving it justice in terms of what human resources do on the corporate side, right? So they do recruiting, there are aspects of human resources that a recruiter does, right? But really at the end of the day, a staffing business is there to make money and to also, as every other corporation, but it is a sales role. My job is if I don't go out and solicit new business by calling clients or using my marketing measures to reach clients to get that business, then there is no sexy recruiting happening because it's you have to pick up the phone and build relationships. You have to be out there trying to, do the things to prove prove that you're good at what you do, display your digital footprinting, show the social proofing and the experience of the work that you've done. So that's where the sales piece comes in. The other part on the candidate side is that a candidate has to trust me and understand that, I've taken the time to meet the client, understand that, it would be a good opportunity for them. And so that takes some sophistication and some, transparency, as well as some like a consultative approach, I guess, on both ends of the table. So no, do I think that, just anybody, even whether it be human resources, whether it be, it doesn't matter. Do I think just anybody can land and build a staffing firm? Probably, yeah. If you're savvy enough, you probably could figure it out. But there are some little nuances that, intricate things that, experience gives you to know how to be effective at it. And I think it goes for anything. I mean, if people would say, I'm doing all of my posts on Canva, so now I'm a really good, what is it called?
Graphic designer?
Designer, right? So you're not a graphic designer because you know how to do a couple of posts on Canva, right? Create your own posts, and yes, you can do all the things, but that doesn't make you a graphic designer, right? So the same thing has to be said for, I think, any field, and knowing your specialization. And, and I think that's one of the other differentiators. I'm not a generalist. I stay in my lane, accounting and finance, IT. I've taken on cybersecurity opportunities recently because it falls in the IT space. Can I do administration? Yes. If a client asks me to help them with a role, yes, I can find that, but I really stay in my lane, right?
Okay.
Because the other thing I don't want to do is start becoming a jack of all trades, and then how can you know so many positions inside out? To keep on top of the IT world is a lot, right? Because it's ever changing. Accounting, changing from the old to the new now with the CPA designations. Like, you've got to keep on top of what's happening in the industry. So no, I don't want to tap into every single industry out there, because, I don't want to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. So
I was laughing because I'm a graphic designer, so I get the Canva thing all the time. Um,
yeah,
we're about to wrap up. There was one last question from the audience that I really want to take, and then we'll wrap up.
yeah.
Did you have experience when you first started? So just let the audience know your experience.
Yeah, so when I very first started, the answer is no. But I think that when I don't know what you mean when I first started. If you mean starting the staffing firm 4 years ago, or just getting into recruitment. So little short story. So, I think I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And so, prior to, when I was in school during the summers from April to September, I worked first for a program called Jobs Ontario Youth many, many moons ago. And that's when I got my first taste of recruitment. And when there was, so this time the Yellow Pages were involved, okay? And so this summer program was working and placing candidates who were facing systemic barriers in society, finding them opportunities that were going to be paid by the government. And that was when Bob Ray was in place. So that will tell you how long ago that was. And I went into a completely different field altogether after that, when I went back to school and so on. And I always had a passion for the career coaching side of recruitment. And I think really that's where my passion and love is really getting, someone from point A to point B. So I've always kind of found myself in those arenas, but, in the last 20 plus years, spending 16 of those years, at a global, like at Robert Half, it really taught me a lot of things. And I think that's the lesson to be learned for individuals who are crafting their career, to learn the things that you need to learn, because you don't know. If someone had said to me 10 years ago, you're going to own your own staffing firm, I would have said no. Even 5 years ago, I would have said no. Right? So you don't know, but you really have, you can really take in and learn so much to do the things that you need to do, so you can do what you want to do.
Okay, Jane, I can hear the passion in your voice, and I love it. How can someone reach out to you?
Well, certainly on LinkedIn under Jane Janniere, you can find me there. You can also find me on Instagram at Jane.the career coach, or at higher.altitude on Instagram as well. But LinkedIn is probably the easiest place. It's where I hang out most times, and yeah, that's it.
Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure having this conversation with you. I definitely learned a lot. And I'd like to thank you for, being a guest today. And thank you, everyone, for watching. This is the Takeout Effect, and see you next week.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.